You're live.
Hey everyone, welcome to the Free Assange Vigil. This is week 74. 74 consecutive weeks of bringing you all of the Julian Assange news we can stomach to deliver. My name is Steve Boykin. I'm joined tonight by my co-hosts Andrew Smith and Misty Winston. We are also joined by our friend Ian Rose from Sydney, Australia, and I think Alex Hills is going to be popping in a moment too. Before we get to all of that and everything else that we have planned for you, let me run down some numbers. Today marks 3,643 days of illegal and arbitrary detention for Julian Assange. 598 days since the WikiLeaks founder was trafficked from the Ecuadorian embassy after being sold to the United Kingdom for a $4.2 billion IMF loan. 34 days remain until District Judge Vanessa Baraitser, the concierge of the U.S. State Department, reads her decision in Julian's rendition hearing. That will be on January 4th, 2021. Action for Assange is currently crowdfunding to get back to D.C. to hold some demonstrations during that time. We'll be there the 3rd and the 4th. Yeah, we'll get to that too. 1,267 days of incarceration for Reality Winner. On the plus side, Chelsea Manning has been out of that miserable, rotten jail in Alexandria, Virginia for 254 days. She's streaming on Twitch, normally Thursday through Sunday, 7 to 11. And Jeremy Hammond has been out of prison and in a halfway house for the last 2 weeks, 14 days. We're very, very, very happy that Jeremy is no longer behind bars and hope that he can get out of the halfway house as soon as humanly possible. And with that, I would like to circle back to Action for Assange going to Washington, D.C., and I'll let Andrew take that bit.
Yeah. We have 2 days of events planned for January 3rd and January 4th. They will be outside of the British Embassy as well as potentially the Department of Justice. We're still in like the finalizing process, just depending on how we want to make that look. What we do have set is that we will be protesting before the ruling happens, while the ruling is happening, and then thereafter the ruling happening. And it really we're just trying to make sure we have our location right and all that kind of stuff, because this is coming out of New Year's. It's going to be really cold, so we're trying to make sure that we accommodate everyone while still making sure that we can wake the British up at midnight when they get Julian to be taken to whatever court he has to appear to in that day. So we are waiting on hearing back from the DC police on that. But I will put the link in the GoFundMe for everyone into the chats. If you could help us share the link around, most importantly, please join us. This isn't going to be possible unless we get people there on the ground with us, more than anything. If you can't make it to DC, like we've always advocated for since the beginning, be the protest in your community. Whether it's you just personally going to a local Department of Justice or news outlet and putting up flyers, or whatever way you want to be a one-person protest in your town. But with that, how are you, Missy?
I am doing pretty good. I also want to ask people to just take a few minutes out of your day. The holidays are kind of upon us, and Julian is by himself in a COVID-ridden supermax. So if you could just take 5 minutes, write a letter, make sure that you go to, is it writejulian.com?
Yeah.
Or is it org? Is it .com? Yeah. Okay. Make sure you go there, because there are certain things you can and cannot send. So just be mindful of that and make sure you address everything properly and all that stuff. But yeah, I can't imagine what that's like for him. So that's just like a really easy way that you can, maybe make a difference in his life right now.
Oh, and I did want to thank all of the people that have donated to that GoFundMe so far. We are, I believe, at the point to where we can secure our lodgings, and I don't think we've read out a list since last week. So quickly, Derek Wright, Michael Bowman, Sarah Wagner, Anonymous, Carolyn Clancy, another anonymous, Daniel Starr, Martine Zunmanis, I'm probably butchering that, and Anonymous. Anonymous loves action for Assange. But thank you so much, guys. Really, it is humbling and awesome, and we love you, and we'll raise hell. Guaranteed.
With that, I would like to welcome a fellow Hellraiser back on the Vigil. How are you doing today, Ian?
I'm well, thank you. Good to see you all. And I suppose you might have heard about the Brereton report that was
Yes.
released here in Australia.
I was actually reading through a bunch of those reports today before I hopped on the stream.
Yes, well, something that's really interesting, you might have also heard the discussion about the tweet that came from China.
Mm-mm.
Okay, so basically what it is, it's a picture telling 1,000 words, basically. It's an Australian soldier slitting the throat of a child holding a lamb. And he's on a bed of an Australian flag with bodies underneath it. Now, page 120 of the Brereton report actually talks about how 2 boys had their throats cut just in such a fashion. So it's not a stretch. But our media here in Australia is, instead of focusing on the Brereton report, it has shifted the focus to China. How dare China say such a thing when they're human rights deficient, you know? And our whole mainstream media is sidestepping the issue. And of course, what the Brereton report has done is, well, aside from the fact that it's validated what WikiLeaks released 10 years ago with the Afghan files, it has also validated David McBride's actions. Is everybody, you're all aware of David McBride? Okay, so he's looking at a lifetime in jail. He worked on 2 campaigns as a general with the Australian Army in Afghanistan in 2011 and 2013. He saw crimes being committed and tried going, just like Chelsea, tried going through the usual channels, was totally rejected by his higher ups. And so he leaked the documents to the ABC. That was what brought about the government raid on the ABC network's Sydney offices. The 2 journalists who published the findings have been exonerated, but this still hasn't put David McBride in the clear. So, you know, we're living in a very strange world. And another thing that's gone on here in Australia is, you might have heard of Kylie Gilbert Moore. She was an Australian incarcerated in Iran. Now, it turns out she's also Julian Assange's cousin, though that wasn't public information till Stella Morris released it upon Kylie's release. And he actually had something to do with her being released. So what's really telling here, though, you will also remember a couple of months ago, the Australian Foreign Minister worked with her counterpart in China to get 2 Australian journalists released. A few years prior to that, our Prime Minister at the time, Malcolm Turnbull, was instrumental in getting James Ricketson, also a journalist and filmmaker, released from Cambodia. And prior to that, the Foreign Minister at the time, Julie Bishop, met her counterpart in Egypt to get Peter Grest released. So the Australian government is strong when it comes to dealing with non-Anglo countries violating human rights. They go in there and they get the job done and make whatever arrangements need to be made. So it is particularly astounding that we're supposed to have a special relationship with the US and with the UK, and yet our governments have done nothing more than, offer consular assistance, which is equivalent to getting a toothbrush to Julian. They have not provided any diplomatic assistance or head of state assistance. But I am very pleased that Kylie Gilbert Moore has been released from what she was facing, and of course the same with James Ricketson. The work that was done to have him released was just amazing. But I suppose you've all heard about Blick Ruby and Peter Cronow's collection of essays. Or actually, what they've done is the book is The Secret Australian, is it? And it's a collection of 17 writers from Australia, all sharing their perspectives on what WikiLeaks has done for Australia and for the good of humanity and so on. And that was released last night, and you can get it online. You can order it online and it'll be delivered to you.
Yeah, I'll actually put the link in chat for everybody for that. And that's to the book itself, but they did do a live stream and they released it too. And that was really cool. We have that. We don't have any clips or anything for it, just because we don't like necessarily risking the copyright and all that fun stuff. But I will put it in chat for everyone to check out, because it's only about an hour long, and it was a really good panel with Peter, and Jennifer Robinson was on it as well. So it was, I thought it was really phenomenal. I listened to it on my snowy ride into work today. If you could, though, could you talk a little bit more about just some of the details in the Brereton report? Brereton report, because that's actually super interesting. And just to kind of put it into context, this is partly related to David McBride's exposures, but as you were saying, it's more about a larger conflict that's happening inside of the Australian military. And to my knowledge, this is one of the first times a Western nation has admitted that its own soldiers committed mass atrocities, because this isn't like one incident that happened. This is documented over a period of time. So could you talk a little bit more about that and kind of what you think that might mean for the global stage?
Yes. So it took 4 years to compile this document, and it is a long document. And I have to be honest, I haven't read the whole thing. It highlights 39 specific cases, which is emblematic of the whole. And one of the aspects it looks into is the culture of blooding. Now, from my understanding, this is really, and I mean no offense to Americans, but this is a culture that's come from the US. Getting your first kill makes you a man. Now, and then this has come about since we've had more intensive training with the US, like our military has. If you jump back to the Vietnam War, the Australian, and I think they've still got the same record, had a record of 2 hits per 3 bullets used by the military. So, and this comes down to a couple of things. The type of weaponry they were using was different than what the Americans were using there. They had single shot rifle type things rather than, multiple shotguns. And also they were judicious in how they used them. So they had to line up and sight. Whereas I get the impression that if a US soldier heard a noise, they would just scattergun with their automatic rifle and kill grandma harvesting rice when it was just a duck moving. So the Australian military used to have a really good record for not doing quite so much. I mean, I don't think any military is exempt from raping and pillaging and carrying on and so on. I'm not absolving them of that in any way, but they had a much better record for not feeling the need to engage in blooding activities and so on like that. But since because the Afghan war is the longest war our country's ever been involved in, and since the shared training exercises and so on have gone on, this is where a cultural change has happened within our military that's made it more like the US military. And I get the impression that that's the sort of thing that David McBride was wanting to address. I get the impression that that's the sort of thing that can be read out of the Afghan files from WikiLeaks. As for the Australian government actually writing a report, because the Brereton report isn't a government report, they're now doing their damnedest to completely ignore it. You know, the whole of the mainstream media is not addressing the issue. Here, front page news is Tiananmen Square. You know, we're bringing up China's human rights violations. We are not addressing our own through our mainstream media. It's very, and I've been on social media today, you know, on various different social grouping sites, like, you know, Thinking Australians for Progressive, you know, and stuff like that. And the amount of people that are just blindly following what the mainstream media's narrative is I'm truly astounded. I really am. Sorry, that's a bit of dead air there.
Oh no, that's I agree. I do. I read the Afghan papers pretty thoroughly. David's been on the show a number of times. He's been on my show. He's a wonderful, wonderful man. The only reason that he was supposed to be on last week, and his attorneys told him that he could no longer do interviews, which didn't make me feel as bad when I saw that under normal circumstances he would have been on Consortium News Live the other day for the war crimes thing. Like, oh yeah, okay, that wasn't just a line. I didn't think it was. Pretty solid guy. But it. I hate to say it, but for all intents and purposes, Australia is just a vassal state of the United States Empire. And I know enough veterans to say that in most cases, it's not a U.S. soldier hears a noise and it's just spray and pray. You know, like most of these guys are thoroughly trained to do 3 shots very localized, you know, and all kill shots. But there are always going to be, you know, brand new kids, 18-year-old children who are 6,000 miles away for the first time in their entire lives, and they're scared shitless, and they've got a full magazine and it's on full auto, you know, and they'll dump a clip. Absolutely. I mean, that's it's the nature of war. It's the nature of turning a child into a soldier, where they're stripped of 100% of their humanity and identity and told that they're not the person that they were 2 weeks ago doesn't exist anymore. And now you're a part of something that is larger than yourself. And it's your responsibility that the person next to you on either side stays alive and shit like that. And that's a high pressure situation for a kid to be in, you know. I mean, even if he's coming to the end of a 12, 15, 18 month tour. I'm reading Danny Sherson's book right now, Patriotic Descent, and Danny does really kind of wax philosophic about, you know, what was going through his mind and what was going through the minds of people that were in his unit, that he was in charge of their lives, you know. And he said that he has never personally met, nor has he never heard about someone coming back from George Bush's wars and Barack Obama's wars and Donald Trump's wars without PTSD.
Well,
I don't know if you could. How could you?
I mean, you could be a total fucking sociopath and just get promoted
That's
up the
true.
ladder
And
really quick.
There are definitely those people. Yeah, you're right. They get promoted. Those are generals now. You know.
Yeah.
Well, and that's the problem, right? So you have, from what I was reading, what's happening in Australia, the investigations are centering on the troops on the ground, which is important. That is not an unimportant part of the investigation, but it seems like they're intentionally leaving off and deflecting for officers. Like there was an article that I was reading that described how Australian soldiers set up like a private drinking unit, and that they had the leg of a dead Pakistani amputee, and it was like his prosthetic leg that they were drinking beer out of. And the entire article literally was like, well, the officers may have known, but we don't know. And like,
oh, they make it so
and
complicated. And Ian brought up, the fact that they're trying to distract with, oh, I can't believe China said this about Australia and how rude. And, it's kind of their Russiagate. It's their way of trying to deflect from their failings or whatever, or their war crimes. They always do this. There's never accountability. It's not even something they're capable of. So they'll just try to deflect and distract and, look the other way. But it's very interesting to me that the media across the globe is handling this in the way that they are. This isn't like a tiny story. This is a big story. It's like Julian's trial. That's a big story and nobody's covering it. It really is just bizarre. To see all of it, this is historic stuff and nobody's talking about it. And it's, interesting.
Well,
apparently Four Corners did a hell of a piece on it the other week. Can you speak to that at all?
what I can speak to is our Prime Minister. He's known here as Scotty from marketing.
That's amazing. That's amazing.
He calls himself ScoMo, but most of us call him Scammo or Scummo. And the other thing is, he announced that China owed an apology for its repugnant tweet. And that became the theme and the headline. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So something that we're also not paying attention to is that since the election in the US, the Australian military has been put on alert. We're now ready for a war footing because we're expecting Joe Biden to open up multiple theatres of war. Now, to be honest with you, I think voting in America is like choosing to remove your left eye or your right eye. None is really appropriate or desirable. But the one thing about Trump that everybody seems to be overlooking is that he's the first US president not to start a new war since Jimmy Carter. How did that happen?
But he's the most dangerous president in history.
And I would preface that with public
he's
war,
pretty awful.
because there was a point
for gilding the cage inside the US, but for the rest of us outside the US, while we commiserate with you and so on, there's a lot of people in theatres of war that are very happy that they're not being bombed as much as they were and so on. But
Trump has outdroned Obama in 4 years. He's dropped more drones in 4 years than Obama did in 8. He started coups in Venezuela, heavily influenced Brazil's election in 2017, which brought in Bolsonaro, Bolivia, Nicaragua, Honduras, Guatemala. He has massively increased U.S. troop presence and activity in Africa, where we have been fighting proxy wars with China for the last decade. I'm not trying to say that you're wrong, because he didn't start a new war. He didn't at all. He continued all of them. We're still bombing the same 7 countries regularly every day that we were bombing when he took the oath of office. He started a ton of coups in the global south, but didn't go outright and launch a brand new war. And we are absolutely getting that if Kamala Harris and freaking brain pudding somehow managed to actually get into the Oval Office, which it looks like they're going to do because Trump's legal team hasn't put up any kind of a serious challenge to what was pretty clearly, obviously, a fraudulent election. But they're not supposed to. They're not going to. It's not their job to mount a serious challenge to election fraud, because the election fraud benefits the Republicans and benefits the Democrats. And as long as we keep having elections in this system with electronic voting machines, with proprietary software, with mail-in ballots that are shady as fuck, with untested AI software scanning ballot signatures in a number of states, we're never going to have a free and fair election.
No, yeah, look, you really are disadvantaged. Here in Australia, we have compulsory voting, so it's, around 90% of the people vote rather than around 50%. We also have preferential voting, so you can vote, you've got your 6 candidates, your 6 different parties, and you'll have 1 to 6. So you might not get the one you want, but your votes, it's a better system.
It's called ranked choice voting over here, and there's a couple of states that implement it, but it's certainly not been put out at the federal level or nationally.
And it will not ever be. It makes things a little bit more fair, and they're never going to do anything that makes anything more fair.
Yeah. So as for the coups and all of that sort of thing, I just automatically, because what I was really referring to was the fact that the Australian army hasn't had to go into any new wars. The US's allies haven't had to do that. We weren't involved in Brazil or any of those things. And in a sense, that's business as usual, Pentagon, CIA, coup type behavior. It doesn't really matter who the president is, that sort of goes on. I kind of see the... you've got your war profiteering oligarchs at the top. They control the Pentagon, and the Pentagon controls the White House. And the White House in the old days, like last century, an example I think would be the crop dusters, right? Remember the crop dusters that were found in Florida. Now, if the Democrats were in at the time, I assume they would have stopped it, nipped it in the bud, whereas the Republicans thought, oh no, this is an opportunity we can take advantage of, we'll push it forward. Now that's very simplified thinking, and that was just my first blush thought at the time that the buildings were attacked. But I'm just really using it as an analogy. But that's no longer the case. Both the Democrats and the Republicans over there are completely beholden to the Pentagon. And it is only through documents like the Brereton report and people, in a sense, what we need to do is go through and pull out all the eye teeth, like the example that I used on page 120 that refers to the offending tweet. We get those eye teeth out, get that story, those bits of information shared across the greater populace. And then, of course, it's that old analogy of we are the many, they are the few. Do you know what I mean? And we just have to unify. In a sense, Obama hinted at it when he was first elected. He said, okay, now I'm elected. What you have to do is be in the streets and demanding what it is you want. 2 things happened. He was taken into the darkened room and shown the video from the grassy knoll, as they say, which is really the culvert. And the other thing is he was way too trusting of the upper house, or whatever you call it over there, the Senate, and didn't push through the reforms he wanted. He actually was elected to do, and the greater populace didn't also march in the streets saying we want free education now, or we want Medicare now. They didn't keep it on the boil. So because when you're a president in America, it seems to me from the outside, you're just a figurehead. What was really interesting about Trump was he was like a Roman emperor, gone crazy. Do you know what I mean? He kept shuffling the board all the time. He would fire and rehire people. All his closest advisors were his family. And you've got that creep, his son-in-law, Kushner. I mean, I'm not advocating for any of them as being good people, but what I'm trying to say is that the system is so broken, or appears to be so broken, that it took a crazy emperor-style figure to go in there and mess things up. I mean, he messed up NATO. His first action was to rip up the TPP, which would have totally thrown the corporatocracy into paroxysms of alarm and despair. And of course, Biden's back, and he's wanting to reopen it.
Well, yeah.
They just named it, repackaged it, and it's still around. Just I think it's like CCTTP.
Oh, the RECP.
Yeah.
Something like that. Yeah, it's the same thing. It's just repackaged, new cover.
The RECP's been sort of hiding in the background for 4 or 5 years now.
Mm-hmm.
They sort of, when the campaign to oppose the Trans-Pacific Partnership was getting really big, that's when they introduced that, and I think that includes China, if I remember correctly.
Yep.
Yeah, and but these types of treaties are really bad because it's paving the way for the corporatocracy, and like I said, as soon as Biden was elected, the Australian military was immediately put on high alert and ready for joining the US in whatever theaters of war are going to reopen up.
So a couple of weeks back, I guess at this point, on Slow News Day, Gloria and I covered a couple of memos that a neoliberal economic think tank called the Peterson Institute had sent to Joe Biden and to Larry Summers, who it looks like is going to be Biden's Secretary of Treasury. And he's a former Secretary of Treasury. And the subject of the memos was, you need to get back into the Trans-Pacific Partnership. You need to rejoin the CPTPP. And they went through with all of these just nauseating talking points. But I mean, that's real. And when we uploaded the video, when the video uploaded to YouTube, like we titled it something like Biden and Harris will bring back the TPP. Didn't make any pronouncements on the election, but it got a little subheading warning from YouTube that was like, the Associated Press has called the election, but there hasn't been an official result, like blah, blah, blah. Like we're not doing it. We're just reading the memos. But that's one of the ways that YouTube likes to mess with the channel. But you're very right in that presidents are figureheads, and as crazy as Trump was, when you take a step back and you look at the antics and the rhetoric, and then you look at the legislation, Trump has been a run-of-the-mill standard, kind of better than most in terms of getting the boilerplate GOP agenda passed. Not that Trump was a good president, but that he had done the job of tax cuts for billionaires better than George W. Bush certainly did, because they're permanent.
Right.
He 3 times in a row in his presidency signed what was at that time the single largest upward transfer of wealth in recorded human history. The first time was the first set of tax cuts, second time was the second round of tax cuts, and then the CARES Act, which was a $5 trillion slush fund to not just America's oligarchs, but their international partners as well. it's hard for me personally to look at Trump as anything more than a caretaker of George H.W. Bush's legacy.
Well, legislatively, he is like really, he is like a classic Republican, but they have used him as kind of this circus clown
He's
to,
a fucking carnival barker.
do you know what I'm saying? And
Straight
it's like,
up.
they use him to do all of these terrible things, or he says all these terrible things, but then, I mean, Nancy Pelosi is passing his entire legislative agenda. I mean, there's no opposition to him. They're not fighting back against, there's no resistance. Are you kidding me? They passed everything he wanted. They didn't put up even one iota of a fight against him.
They gave him money for his border wall.
They gave him money for the military. I mean, seriously, he's so crazy and he's such a threat and he's so dangerous, but we're going to give him way more money than he even asked for the military. And we're going to give him even more spying power. And we're going to, like
They're going to reauthorize the Patriot Act.
Theater. It's fucking theater. He's not the most dangerous president in the history of the world. Bernie Sanders, shut the fuck up. He's a normal, everyday, run-of-the-mill president, corrupt, corporate-owned piece of shit warmonger. That's what he is. But he's no different than any of the rest of them. And then mythology is ridiculous.
Where Trump differs is that Trump knows how to play not just to his base, but he knows how to just trigger the fuck out of everybody else. And while they're distracted, while they're talking about what kind of monster he is, or misogynist he is, or racist he is, or white supremacist, or this or that or the other, that's when we're sending troops, military advisors to Guatemala. That's when we're sending people to go oust Nicolas Maduro. That's when we're ramping up our presence in Africa. That's when we move NATO's headquarters from Germany to Belgium so that it poses a more physical threat to Russia. But you're never going to hear that. Nobody said shit when Trump backed out of the SALT treaty with Russia, except for he's Putin's puppet. And it benefits Vladimir Putin to not have this nuclear arms treaty with the most dangerous, unhinged president in the history of presidents ever. Swearsies, we just gave him nearly $1 billion or nearly $1 trillion in his military budget.
Wow.
We gave Vladimir Putin almost $1 trillion in our military budget so that Putin can go use our troops to make war around the world with himself and his allies. Because that's a thing that grown-ups think makes sense.
Something that I find really disturbing about the whole scenario is how his spin doctors managed to get the line, and it very much came through QAnon, which is Trump will save Assange. We've got a private discussion and research page of 11,000 Assange supporters on it. And I suddenly was faced with a wave of people saying, Trump will save Assange, or Trump's great for this or that or the other, while totally ignoring the fact that it was the Trump administration that has put Julian in the situation he's in now. And how you could get millions of people making this complete disconnect. Yes, it'll be fine. Julian can go to America and Trump will save him. And I just am gobsmacked that the spin doctoring that can go on to make this seem like a feasible argument. I suppose what will be really telling will be if something happens between the 4th and the 20th of January. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, the thing with Julian, QAnon, and Russiagate is all of them are right. So QAnon can't be taken as its own thing. It is counter-reinforced with Russiagate. And the largest portion of the narrative exists, in my opinion, solely to be able to get Julian in the hands of the intelligence community. QAnon is a psychological operation being used to distract the most influential part of the internet which is the Chans, which is the Anons, to work at the behest of Donald Trump and waste their time, essentially. Because you have the QAnoners who believe that Donald Trump's going to bring Julian here to reveal that the Russians didn't do it. And then you have the Russiagators who say Donald Trump's going to bring Julian here to reveal this. So he has to be prosecuted, because that's another argument that exists out there. That's actually what Rachel Maddow, I believe, had talked about on her show, was the potential of Julian being brought and speaking out against or telling the truth about Russia collusion or some shit. So those two things work hand in hand to allow the intelligence community to expand, because when the Democrats do it, it's about stopping Russian interference. And when Trump expands the intelligence community, it's about stopping the deep state. And both of them are distracting the general public and getting them to ultimately ignore the fact that Julian Assange is going on trial, or has been on trial now. So that's one of those things that I've like just personally been looking at for so long that it's painful to see people still can't see through that. Like, not that individually, but just like as a society or as a planet, most people will fall into one of those two categories at this point.
Yeah.
Or be too apathetic to even care about any of it.
Well,
But
maybe
how
not
are
even
you, Alex?
necessarily apathetic, though. You know, like they just don't like. A lot of people don't know at all, have no idea, like don't even know who Julian Assange is. So, you know, it's not necessarily that they're even apathetic. They just are clueless. They're just ignorant. They don't know. So, I mean, that's a whole other battle that we face because there's no coverage.
Yeah, I'm good, Andrew, and yeah, I agree completely. I think that we can hit back with the Cassandra Fairbanks call. That really does debunk some, you know, the Q narrative anyway. And then when it comes to Julian giving evidence that will support Russiagate or not or whatever, we already know 2 days before the election, it's all come out that WikiLeaks has got no Russian influence. It's all, you know, that's already been revealed, and we also know that Julian will never reveal sources. So it's, you know, what are they going to achieve? Really, they need to be debunked on those two levels, I think. But hello, everybody. I'm sorry I'm late.
Oh, that's okay.
Alex, it's always good to have you with us, and we, you know, you arrive precisely when you mean to.
Oh,
Yeah.
It's good to see you, Alex.
I think it's
Great to
interesting
see you.
that Julian did state in an interview a long time ago, maybe 18 months ago, that the source codes proved it was from within the DNC and not from an outside source because of the way the coding is. And of course, with the death of Seth Rich, it's pretty much expected that he was the one that did it. And there's nothing further to be gained. So it really, you know, shuts down the QAnon argument. But I did want to actually jump back to something and I wanted to ask you folks in America, and also Alex, actually, how is the Brereton report? You were saying it's a big thing. How is it being received overseas?
I haven't heard anything about it
It's
aside
not
from
really.
what I
It's
know
not
about.
really.
If I didn't
Yeah,
have friends in Australia, I wouldn't know it existed.
Yeah. If I didn't do what I do and talk to the people I talk to, I would have no idea what was going on, probably.
But you've all heard about the offensive tweet. Do you think, is that mainstream?
No.
I don't
But
think so.
I don't go and check mainstream sources
I'm looking right now.
99.9% of the time. Like
I
I've
saw it
got
on Twitter. It was trending on New Zealand Twitter. Australia should demand apology from China for that image. Yeah, we got that. I don't also go to mainstream media very much, but I haven't seen an awful lot of discussion in what I've seen. Not in New Zealand.
Right. Okay. Because Andrew, you were pointing out that this is a pretty monumental occasion where a government has finally admitted they've done wrong. I'm just wondering what your thoughts would be on how that could be progressed. You know, how could that be made?
So I don't know how it could be progressed per se, aside from just educating people the same way we do on everything about what's going on and what has happened. But the thing that concerns me the most is, and it's something that I had touched on a little bit about the officers and whether or not the people that wrote the rules of engagement, that approved the gunfire, that dropped put an X on a map and said, send guys here, that those people are going to get away with it. And it'll be the boot soldiers and the people that could testify against them in the International Criminal Court that are getting actually put into jail in Australia. Because one of the fears that I had with just seeing the QAnon narrative develop is the idea that the elite will essentially stage war crime tribunals to be able to get themselves out of this situation, because the public in certain sectors is so aware and so frustrated. So that's, I guess, my bigger concern is that they're going to put a show to lock up all the witnesses while the actual perpetrators and sociopaths walk free.
Yeah.
I'm not seeing anything on MSNBC at all. I see one article on CNN. So yeah, it's not really getting covered. And of course, no big surprise. Independent media is not touching it really either. I mean, aside from us. And I don't know, has anybody else done anything?
I don't think so.
I don't think Jimmy Dore has. Has Burmis? Has
I've been so freaking busy.
I've been so busy,
I don't even honestly like. I don't know.
You're
I
right.
really don't. I did kind of want to highlight, and this is an article that we had last minute thrown in the show doc, though. At the same time that there is a QAnon narrative that Julian Assange coming to the United States is beneficial because then Trump could free him. Blue Anon has a similar theory now about one Joseph R. Biden. And to this we turn to the Intercept, who has a just pie in the sky child's view of the world and Julian's case. And this is an outlet, by the way, that refused to carry. Andrew, could you mute while you're banging away at your keyboard?
Oh, that one wasn't me. That was
that wasn't
me.
you?
I'm really sorry.
Okay. Andrew does. So it was, yeah.
So
it wasn't
don't yell at the
8
guest.
billion.
Don't yell at the guest.
8 billion key hits a second that it is. But as I was saying, the Intercept is the outlet that passed on carrying Kevin Gustola's reporting during Julian's hearing because upper management had a problem with his politics. Kevin Gustola, too radical
the craziest thing I've ever
for the
heard.
internet or for the Intercept. Kevin is one of the most diplomatic, mellow, professional, just
respectable, dignified, you know.
And the
Intercept is the Intercept has lost their thread, though.
Yes,
You know,
the Intercept is a joke now. It's really sad.
years ago.
Yes.
Years ago. But
Yes.
I if you don't mind, we can if you guys are down, we can go through this.
If we could, I would love to get Ian.
Yeah, which article?
Reaction to this.
I'll share screen it.
Okay.
I got it.
I've got it set up.
Dude.
Well, so
do you?
that they can see it.
It's the Intercept one, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't have an Intercept one on my thing.
I can't see your screen.
You won't be able to.
Josh is putting it up for the audience. I'll put the link in chat real quick in the Jitsi chat.
I mean, you can throw up your share screen if you want. If guests want to see it, and I'll just play the one I have for the audience.
Yeah, that'll work too.
And while you guys have been doing that, I found an article in stuff.co.nz that does reference the Brennan Report and does reference Nikki Haga, who did a similar expose on New Zealand soldiers. So it has been picked up. It looks like it's more or less the Sydney Morning Herald article just repeated. Just thought I'd throw that in there.
All right, and then I'm gonna wander over to the Intercept and this article by Charles Glass. When Joe Biden becomes president of the United States on January 20th, a historic opportunity awaits him to demonstrate America's commitment to the First Amendment. That's the first sentence. Like somebody got paid to write that. He can, in a stroke, reverse 4 years of White House persecution of journalism by withdrawing the application to extradite Julian Assange from Britain to the U.S. This would be in line with the departures from Trump's policies Biden is promising on healthcare, environmental protection, and tax fairness. Assange's liberty represents the liberty of all journalists and publishers whose job is to expose government and corporate criminality without fear of prosecution. We need and deserve to be protected against government control of the press. I agree with that sentence.
Right. That's what I was going to say. Like, they did a good job capturing the heart of Glenn Greenwald in that one. But the rest of the article is the reason why he left The Intercept.
Right.
And real quick, like, it's one thing. I'll take it off of the share screen here for you guys. It's one thing to say that, run down the threat that this poses to journalism, run down the threat that this poses to all of us and everyone in this sphere. It's another to be able to come to that conclusion and talk about it and then be like, so let's leave it up to the president to figure it out. Like, you're not advocating in the opening paragraph, everyone needs to demand this. And right off the bat, like, that's a forest of red flags for me. By removing the 1917 Espionage Act charges against Assange, Biden would be adhering to the precedent set by the administration in which he served for 8 years as vice president. Obama's DOJ investigated Assange and WikiLeaks for 3 years until 2013 before deciding, in the words of Mark Feldstein, to follow established precedent and not bring charges against Assange or any of the newspapers that published the documents. Equal application of law would have required the DOJ to prosecute the New York Times that had as large a hand in publicizing war crimes as did Assange himself. So we can, we can parse that a little bit, but here's where the absolute fantasy comes home. Biden has signaled his intention to return the U.S. to international cooperation, revoking Trump's withdrawal from the WHO, the Paris Agreement, and the Joint Comprehensive Plan on Action to control Iran's nuclear program. I want to circle back to that. America's return to the community of law-abiding nations would be enhanced further by adhering to judgments from the United Nations Working Group on Arbitrary Detention and Inter-American Court of Human Rights, calling for Assange's immediate release. They don't, however, mention that the UN Rapporteur on Torture released a report. Odd that. It will take courage for Biden to retract.
The other thing they don't mention, because it was talking about the Paris Climate Accord, is that the Paris Climate Accord is built on the data and findings from the International Governmental Panel on Climate Change from the UN. The ClimateGate, as it was generally referred to, exposures, showed that the International Government Panel on Climate Change was hyper-politicized, and all of their data was forged in a previous version of that same report that they put out. So even going as far as to tie the Paris Climate Agreement in an article about Julian Assange without mentioning the fact that WikiLeaks exposed that data that agreement is based on is crazy to me. Like, just that alone in and of itself is just one piece of how thick the propaganda is in this entire article.
And he also doesn't mention the fact, like while he says in 2013, the Obama administration decided to stop pursuing Assange. They didn't. They kept open their secret grand jury.
Yeah.
They were meddling. They were forcing. They were playing the game really badly.
Listen,
and
I'm fully convinced that Trump is being used to do this because he's such a buffoon and he's so loud and do you know what I mean? Like he just doesn't care. And so they're like, oh, well, we can get away with this under this guy. He'll go for it. And, Obama didn't want. He's so worried about his damn legacy that he knew that if he was the guy that destroyed the First Amendment, that there's no way you can outrun that. You know, like there's no way you can outrun that legacy. And so, you know, hey, Donald Trump's president, let's arrest Julian Assange and let's prosecute him because I don't think Trump cares about his legacy or if he's even intelligent enough to give a shit. You know, like I mean, I actually went after Trump and the MAGA crowd, like, hey, you're being used by Democrats to do their dirty work and go after Julian Assange, you know, appeal to his, you know, sense of petty and ego.
It's highly likely Biden can just not do anything and go, oh, well, Trump did it. You know
well, that's exactly what he's going to do.
Door.
He's going to say it's in the hands of the courts now. I don't want to interfere. It's not my place. And he's going to let it go through. Absolutely. No question.
Yeah.
I mean, likewise, have you seen what's been going on with the OPCW and Aaron Mate and Vanessa Beeley in the UK and what they've done to the legacy of Robert Fisk, who, you know, uncovered so much that we know about the Syria war. And now the BBC has been putting out puff pieces about white helmets again. And I'm appalled. I mean, New Zealand Fire Brigade, we trained the white helmets. Now, if you look at the OPCW leaks, there's references in there that do allege that there's some kind of 35, 40 bodies that were placed on the site there that do trace back to the white helmets. And now we're trying to pretend that the white helmets were all still fluffy and that Robert Fisk was the corrupt person. And I just worry that that's happening to someone like Robert Fisk. And we know that Vanessa Beeley is being attacked and people like that and the Propaganda Institute in the UK that's trying to unveil some of this with Pierce Robinson and that crew. It's very disturbing to see how history is being completely rewritten here.
I really think that all of this, though, the attacks on Robert Fisk, the attacks on Craig Murray, the attacks on Vanessa Beeley, all of these things, it seems like individualized attacks. I talked about this on my other show today. We interviewed Alexander Davidson, and this is really all of these things are part of a larger war on investigative journalism. All of these things are meant to deter people from thinking that is, a profession that they're going to want to go into or that it's even a viable option. They're trying to deter anybody from thinking that is something that they want to go through and do because, they just want stenographers. And so if they can discourage people by all of these little attacks against Julian Assange and Vanessa Beeley, it's sending out little warning shots, and it's that, the whole chilling effect that, oh, well, these people, look at these people, they expose the truth, but then look what happens to them. I don't want to do that. And it's this game that they're playing. It's a war on investigative journalism. It really is.
It is.
I think people have voted. Oh, sorry. You go.
I've just sent you a link in the chat there. It's a conversation with Jeremy Corbyn and Tariq Ali. I saw it last night from Stop the War Coalition, and they are talking about this very topic. They're talking about the really appalling treatment of Fisk's legacy and his monumental work. It is. I unfortunately didn't see all of it. That's why I've just shared it with you. But this is an issue that has to be addressed. We're moving into identity politics. We're moving into people looking at the minutiae rather than the bigger picture. If somebody says something about somebody, the next person says, yes, I heard X did Y, and then the story travels like that. We seem to be moving into an era where people are absolved of facts. They're not interested in that. They heard their good friend say something disparaging about Fisk, so it must be true, and it builds on that, which is.
I was going to say one of the things we can do about it, and I think people have been doing, is voting with their feet, and drive to actually invest in small media, invest in journalists, put your money there, take your money out of NGOs, take your money out of any institutions, take them out of, if you know, World Health Organization, anything, Bill and Melinda Gates, Amazon, Monsanto. Just vote with where we're putting our money. No more charities, because we just have seen where that money has gone in the end, particularly with NGOs and their lack of ability to do anything about any of this that's ongoing.
People are
I think that's
just
one of the things
now.
that can be powerful.
People are just now starting to realize that NGOs might not be the steadfast warriors for truth, freedom, and democracy that they claim to be. And even today, you brought up Aaron Mate. He was tearing somebody to shreds over something, and while like defending Naomi Klein, who backs the thing that he was tearing apart. And it's like, Naomi Klein and 530.org is a giant slush fund for all of the people that are going to be able to become trillionaires if they ever get that Green New Deal passed. At least the way that AOC presented it, which is a giant giveaway to corporations. It's end user punishing. It ignores the military, like everything about
it. Ignores fracking. Fracking isn't even mentioned at one time. And then she went after Joe Biden for not being against fracking. And I'm like, sis, it's not even in your plan. What are you talking about?
And I'm so sick of them putting the guilt on the young people and the end user, as you said there, Steve. It's just so frustrating that we're talking about that. And, you know, you go to recycling centers and you're given this, oh my God, you're doing so badly with your recycling. But we shouldn't even have ever, you know, inflated the recycling industry and allowed the plastics industry to basically do what they did, which was, you know, enable it. Here we are putting all the guilt onto all the young people, making them really, really passionately upset. And really, we should be focusing on the corporations, the people, you know, producing the plastics in the first instance, cradle to grave, you know, that kind of philosophy. Instead of that, we're just dishing it all on the people at the end. Terrible.
Yeah. I don't know about Australia or New Zealand, but in the United States, most of our recycling gets thrown on ships and taken to
Ours goes to China, or did.
Okay, ours goes South Pacific, but different country, and I can't
China
remember
actually
exactly
in the heat of the trade war, and this is a really awkward conversation, but in the heat of the trade war, China stopped purchasing U.S. garbage and U.S. recycling. Yep. And now, in the middle of COVID-19, right, all these major cities are freaking out like, we don't know what to do with our garbage. We don't know what to do with our garbage, when it's literally not that shipping transnational garbage is a good idea, but the media is not even being honest with why they're having the issues and the collapse of an entire essential industry, which is trash removal. And it's because the person that was subsidizing it is no longer doing that.
Well, I'm concerned because I actually taught Agenda 21 at university level. I was a lecturer in sustainable architecture. I taught in Australia, actually, at the University of New South Wales. I taught it in UK at Oxford Brookes. And I've been teaching this philosophy for years, talking about smart cities, smart grids, you know, metering, you know, the benefits of surveillance on green buildings and how you can rethink. And of course, every academic is sold a narrative which is incredibly blinkered. And so you only see the benefits and what you can see in your career and what it would mean for green buildings and us to take value as to being cradle to grave and do with all the life cycle costing thing. It all sounds great, but when you actually look at the wider picture of Agenda 21 and 2030, you're horrified because you realize it's what the Great Reset is all about, and it's a technocracy where Amazon and Monsanto and all these people rule. And this is why I feel like Julian was silenced. I really do. I think that he had to be silenced during this era because he would have got the truth out into the mainstream, which we've just completely devoid of now.
Yeah, I mean, the British government couldn't even stand to have Julian mention that some guy may not have been poisoned by a former Russian spy. Like, just that comment got them to cut his internet off at the embassy. Imagine if he shot out a tweet or anything about what was happening right now.
Well, there were a couple of things in his last interview which concern me particularly now.
Electromagnetic smart dust.
Yeah, the smart dust and the discussion about the technopoly taking over, and the censorship. I mean, all that sort of stuff. And it feels like it was one of his last known speeches, and we should be taking note. What was all that about? I've never really unpicked that, and I don't understand.
It was
what
about
it was
this. It's about what we're living through right now. It was the warning for all of us to heed. That's what it was. That is what he was. His whole career had been about trying to stop this. This is the coming dystopia that the opening of Cypherpunks referred to.
Yeah, well, the most hate I'm getting on Facebook is from my professors and people from my old school life, actually, who seem to be really, really keen on military complex kind of narrative talking points. And I've actually almost given up on Facebook because of it. I can't deal with it anymore.
I deleted my Facebook on election day,
I saw
and I feel like 20 pounds lighter.
Yeah.
I haven't been on Facebook since Cambridge Analytica. So
yeah.
Does
I
my group disappear when I go?
Not if there's other admins.
Right.
You'd have to pass it over to someone else.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, and big shout out to Nat.
Yes.
For maintaining a slow news day presence on Facebook. She's
awesome.
The absolute funniest picture of me for the avatar.
It's
Please
glorious.
tell me it's the middle finger one that I gave you. Is it that one?
Huh? No.
Oh, that would be funny.
No.
It's
I'll find
it's glorious.
it. I will.
Okay. I'm not on Facebook, so don't ask me to go find it.
I won't ruin it. It's good though.
Okay. Did Steve show you the one I found of him? Sleepy?
Was that the?
I'll send it to you.
Yeah, send it to me.
Yeah, it's really fun.
From last week?
Yeah, the one where your YouTube cut your stream and you were pissed off, so it was you giving the middle finger. It's so funny.
Yeah.
I'll find it.
That's funny.
I haven't been on Twitter.
There
I haven't hardly been on Twitter in a couple days, so I've missed a bunch of stuff, I'm sure.
Is there anything else you guys wanted to go through in this Intercept article before we get too distracted?
I mean, we can. It's just more bullshit. Like, we can keep going if we want, but
I mean, it's a lot of bullshit.
Don't we have Australia
really,
stuff?
there's only one line or like a couple of lines in that article that I want to kind of leave with, because he does eventually mention Niels Melzer, but puts scare quotes around psychological torture. But the last line in the piece, or the last two, is Biden's choice on January 20th is between the opposite course taken by his two immediate predecessors, Obama and Trump. His conscience should tell him which to follow.
Oh, can we please stop pretending like Joe Biden has a conscience, or that he's a good guy, or that he's a decent human being? He's a piece of shit corporatist. He's not a good dude. He's never going to be a good dude. Please shut the fuck up about it. I'm tired of hearing about how he's decent and he's good and he's kind and he's compassionate. No, he's fucking not. Shut up. Sorry.
Do we have to worry? No one's going to be reading The Intercept anymore now that Glenn's gone. I mean, seriously, their readership must be so low. It must be the equivalent
They're
of
still begging for money like it's running out of style. I mean, they're all over the place trying to get your money, even though they're funded by a billionaire. They just want to keep their 503.
Yeah.
Pieces of shit.
Oh, that's what Aaron was going off on when he
Who's
was like
funding them?
white knighting for Naomi Klein. But yeah, the Intercept's doing some really shady shit with their fundraising.
Piero
They're asking
Mediars.
for-
It's Piero Mediars who funds that, I think. Right? Something like that.
Yeah, Piero Midyar. But he's asking for, the Intercept is asking for like $900,000. And Aaron was like, well, they pay their managing editor $500,000 a year. They pay Jeremy Scahill
But they can't
$300,000 a
afford
year
to publish
write
and continue
Russiagate
to
fan
help.
fiction. Like right off the bat.
The Snowden documents. They can. Is any of that $900,000 going to turn back on the server that has the fucking emails and documents that Snowden gave the Intercept that they shut off 2 years ago? Like, is that what that $900,000 is for?
Apparently, they got through what was it, 2% or 10%? It was a tiny amount.
It was a fucking fraction.
Five.
Like, I'm dyslexic and I could read that shit faster than they did. I did though.
It was pathetic.
While I'm frustrated and angry, our friends over in London have had a hell of a time in the last month, evading police, getting creative with protest methods to conform with lockdown and all of the other craziness. So I wanted to let you, Alex, and you, Ian, kind of just talk about the situations in your countries in regards to protesting right now. And also how it's going. And Alex has a bunch of events that I would like her to talk about too, because I'm super excited about those coming up.
Do you want me to start then, or
if Ian could, actually, because Australia's been particularly iffy.
Well, we've got a few different things going on because essentially we've got like 7 states in Australia, and one of the states on the southeastern corner, Victoria, it had its second wave of COVID-19. So restrictions down there, they went to level 4, I think it was, and they had a really harsh lockdown. But, when you compare them on the 1st of July or whatever it was, and France and the UK and several other countries, they all had much the same numbers. Then by I don't know, the 1st of October, I think it might have been, or the 18th of October, they had 0, while the UK and Paris and these other cities had just spiraled out of control. So what they did in Victoria was really quite necessary. Some of the ways of handling it wasn't, and also some of their responses to actions and so on was a bit excessive. But in the overall, so Australia hasn't had a second spike. We're currently motoring along with single-digit infection cases daily. It's it's quite unlike most other Western countries. We don't have the numbers that they've got in the UK or the US or any of that. So here in Sydney, we've got a really strange thing going on. We can have 50,000 at a football game, but we are restricted by numbers. 6 weeks ago, when I was part of an action which was against the Murdoch bullshit press, we dumped a ton of bullshit at their front door of their offices, and we could only have 20 people there at that rally to be COVID compliant. Whereas now I think we're allowed a few hundred, but at the same time we're allowed 50,000 in a stadium. So it also, what you've got to realize is in New South Wales several years ago, they brought in a bunch of anti-protest laws, which are loosely called move on direction. So if you're barricading something, it could be a gas mine out in the Pilliga, or it could be a corporate office in the city. If the police tell you to move on, you have to move on. If you don't move on, you are arrested. So, but that's different than Queensland and Victoria. They don't have those same laws. So we have different things going on. At the moment, in Sydney, there's a regular Friday vigil at Sydney Town Hall. That had to break during the height of COVID, but it's they became COVID compliant, wore masks, kept their numbers down, and were able to keep on doing it. So we're certainly not suffering what they're suffering in the UK, but we don't have the COVID situation they've got in the UK. We literally don't have it. We wear masks on public transport and in the supermarkets, but even in the supermarket, 80% of people aren't wearing them. Even on the public transport, 30% of the people aren't wearing them. But they're just suggestions. They're not rules that you have to abide by. But like I said, our COVID situation, for the bulk of the country, we all had our second spike via proxy because it all happened in Melbourne, in Victoria. And so anything can happen insofar as either we're going to avoid the second and third spike or we're yet to have them. And something that was pointed out to me the other day, actually, during the plague in the 16th century or whenever it was 40 days quarantine, not 2 weeks. So, humanity has done this before. We can do it again. The other big thing I find about the COVID thing, because there's been some research that suggests it might actually be a bacteria rather than a virus. And that's coming out of Italy. And they're treating people with antibiotics and it's gone. So if that is really the case, then that's what we should be looking at. But even if, as some people think it's a hoax, even if it is a hoax, that's no reason for not actually using their tools against them. Putting on a mask and attending a rally with physical distancing shows an innate sense of coordination that will freak out the state, the authoritarians. Wearing a mask freaks out the authoritarians, even though you've got the health authoritarians wanting us to wear it. The police authoritarians are frightened of it, So we need to be in a situation where we use their potential tools of oppression to our advantage, rather than be fighting against having the need to wear masks or physically distance. We just do that while we're actually fighting against the issue that we want to be fighting against. We don't want, in our case here it's Assange, we don't want that sidetracked or sidelined with, is COVID real? Or I don't need to wear a mask. You can see what happened in America with all those people not wearing masks. I think you've got 10 million cases now, is it?
I'm not sure what the numbers are. I know that they increased the number of tests by some obscene amount, like 500%. And when you increase the number of tests that you're putting out, and the tests themselves don't actually check for COVID, then you're going to get an extraordinarily high number of positive test results. What has never changed is the death rate, which remains around 0.04% for the people who contracted. And just a month ago, when the CDC released a report, it said that out of everyone surveyed that had tested positive for COVID, 80% of the people that said that were positive said that they wore a mask all the time. They complied with all of the mask rules. 3% of the people who tested positive said they never wore a mask. Now, they could be lying. I mean, it's a survey. They could be. But the discrepancies bear scrutiny at minimum.
Oh yeah, the reality is this is a wealth shift, right?
Yeah,
billionaires have all
and
doubled
power consolidation,
their wealth, and the vast mass of society is doing it tough, but and so it I'm led to believe that those that have survived COVID have various different health issues. It can affect different organs, their lungs and so on, in adverse ways. To be honest with you, I honestly don't know if it's true or not. But what my stance is to assume, okay, what they're saying is true, then we use their tools against them. We cannot waste our time deciding if it's true or not. We need to be addressing the wealth shift. We need to be addressing the societal shift. This is actually the opportunity. You see, the first thing that should have happened was a force majeure, which is basically like pressing pause. So you could do it in any strata, and they did it in New York for renters, I think it was, in Los Angeles, and Italy for mortgage holders. So if you had a mortgage, you just didn't pay it for 6 months, and then in 6 months' time you started paying it again. But you also do it for people that are paying rent. You just don't pay rent for 6 months. You're out of work or whatever.
Here they didn't actually, they don't freeze it. So like at the end of that period, you owe 3 months of rent.
Yeah, but that's wrong, because no one's ever going to get out of under that debt.
Yeah.
Well, that's the point.
The idea of a force majeure is basically just to pause payments. And then you start again. And maybe your 25-year mortgage now goes for 25 years and 3 months. Like you still have to pay it off, but it's all pushed away till later. We should be talking about things like the universal basic income as societies in the world. That's what we should be doing.
The trouble is they're going to use the universal basic income, and they're going to make it, coerce it, and it's going to be tied to things like taking a vaccine mandatory, effectively making it mandatory unless you obey. So if you get the Amazons and the Monsantos taking away your jobs and all your businesses, and then you're going to do that to them as well, I think that's such a, I'm beginning to agree. I've been left-wing all my life, and I'm now beginning to see some of the flaws, actually, because fascism is coming from the left in this case. So
I agree. I mean, one of the big problems was when we had equality of the sexes movement, right? That was so women could work and men could stay home. Do you know what I mean? Not so both parents now have to work and you still can't afford to do what you could do 40 years ago on a single income. The whole thing has been shifted and skewered. So in a sense, what we need to be doing is demanding an end to billionaires. If all the multi-billionaires in the world were taxed so they only had $1 billion, we'd all be a lot richer, as societies. But just the whole idea of $1 billion is insane. Who needs more than, say, 100 million? That would be more than what anybody could spend in their life, really. If it's a hoarding mentality. They're hoarding this money, and it's the same with the sustainable population idiots. We actually produce enough food for 10 billion people at the moment, but we are wasting so much food here in the West. And of course you get these people, they've already had their children and grandchildren, they're going, oh, we've got to put a halt to population growth. And it's like, well, that's fine for you, but that's not the issue. So we need to be really drilling down and targeting the real issues here, and not getting caught up with the minutiae. And the real big issues are wealth hoarding by a few. Put a stop to that. We just demand an end to that. It's the same with the plastics industry or the wood chipping industry. Replace it all with industrial hemp, so that we just make it a single target. Do you know what I mean? Everything is replaced with industrial hemp, and suddenly we don't have to be shipping our recycling overseas because it's going to rot in the ground. Suddenly we're not subsidizing our wood, here in Australia, and I think most of the world subsidize their wood chipping industry for paper to a massive extent, when a single crop of hemp will cover 20 years worth of state forests in paper pulp, as you know. So I don't know. Does that make sense? Like
it makes absolute sense. In what I think, where I think we're at least in the U.S. right now, is that because the wealth transfer already happened, and there will be more, and I look at everything that's happened in the last couple of years, COVID included, as sort of this final unified all-in power grab by the predator class, I guess is the broadest way to put it. But you've got you know, you've got the people like Bob Mercer and the Koch family and Sheldon Adelson holding hands with George Soros and Warren Buffett and Jeff Bezos. All of the billionaires are unified right now, all of them. And along with this wealth transfer that we've been experiencing and witnessing, there's also been this massive restructuring of society based upon like a predetermined reaction of fear out of the population. And that's where I think that things like lockdowns or even masks don't become ancillary issues, because if the goal is to scare the populace into compliance, then you do have to address the mechanisms of compliance that these fucks are using. I don't
the strongest thing we can do is not obey. Actually,
I guess what I'm
No.
saying is I
obey.
don't see any of it as unrelated. And at the middle of it, I see Julian Assange in a cell in Belmarsh for 24 hours a day, where they are trying to kill him with this thing. They put over 50 infected prisoners on his wing. And
we actually have a new number. It was 65 prisoners moved into his wing, not counting the staff that are sick.
Yeah. So we've got that going on. And because the predator class is unified on this, because this is a all in, what I honestly believe, final power grab, because even if the estimates about how much planet we have left are naive, I know for a matter of fact that you can't poison the earth, the water, and the air and expect everything to go well, you know? So it's this, I don't know, kind of like really, really weird moment in time, because as a global populace, we've never been more divided. And the narratives exist to make sure that we're divided. Whereas the people who are in charge of deploying the division are all on the same page.
Something to take note of from the WikiLeaks campaign, like themselves, is they're taking COVID-19 very seriously at the moment, and as Andrew just pointed out, it's now 65 in that wing that are COVID infected, and because of Julian's ill health, if he were to catch it, he would even if he survived it, he could come out quite damaged. But the other thing is, and this is something I think that's quite interesting from the WikiLeaks shop, is that they've released a whole lot of masks with, free Assange and so on written across them. Now, my thinking is that I'm assuming that their thinking is along the lines of what I was saying, which is use their tools of oppression against them. Do you know what I mean? Okay, we've got to wear a mask. Okay, it's going to now say free Assange on it.
And masks, actually, if you're going to go to a protest, wear a damn mask of some kind. It's harder for facial recognition if you live in like London or something. I mean, it's a facial recognition.
Exactly. It's using their tools against them.
I was trying to show this one before, but it's too small.
Well, even I talked with Josh about this. The way that facial recognition companies were structured is there was a whole bunch of little ones. Like you would have a facial recognition company that provides like sales support, clock in and out times, customer support, things like that, based on facial recognition patterns. And a lot of them were really small, using open source technology and just slowly accumulating data. The mask mandates rolled out, almost all those tiny facial recognition companies just all went out of business at once, because you can't facial recognize in a world where there's mandated masks. So it allowed there to be a power consolidation as those small companies got purchased up. So that's another like horrifying technocratic move, is that they've now reeled in all of these facial recognition technologies. So even if and when we have the right to take a mask off, they have the systems in place now centralized to surveil us with like Alexa and Microsoft services, as opposed to hundreds and thousands of smaller
And y'all
facial recognition companies.
quit using those face app things that change your face and stuff. You're helping
Yes,
them
Oh my
train their
God.
models. You're helping them train
that's
their
really-
models. Stop.
Yeah, please.
Yeah,
Patrick.
you're literally teaching facial recognition how to work better.
Like,
But
I get it's cute and it's fun and it's like, oh, I'm bored. Let me change myself into Angelina Jolie or whatever. But
Like when we were supposed to do a photo 10 years ago and then do an update.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
remember that one?
Yeah.
They're very
Snapchat has never reported a profit.
right.
The entire time Snapchat has been a thing. Never reported a profit. But what is it? It's the premier app for like stupid fucking kid drug dealers. Sometimes stupid grown-up drug dealers. People who want to cheat on their spouses because of disappearing messages. Do you think those messages disappear? Do you really think they disappeared? Really? And there are how many different filters on Snapchat that you can help teach facial rec AI how to find you better, find people better? Like, if someone came up to me with definitive proof that Snapchat was an intelligence asset entity, I would feel pretty good about my opinion about Snapchat going into that conversation. I would. And we've got so many of these.
So
And-
Alex, though, I did want to
Go ahead.
No, I did want to kick the question over to you about the state of like on the ground protests in New Zealand and how all that's going over there.
Well, I mean, we've done, I suppose, we've had less COVID than even Australia here. People love Jacinda. They're gushing over her. They don't realise what policies are being drawn in underneath the cover of Jacinda. It's a bit like Obama, isn't it? But yeah, I mean, we had that whole thing where you've got BLM. It was okay to protest. They're talking about no police. They might talk about the statues a bit, but they won't talk about, any kind of concerns with it. But then as soon as there's anything about freedom or some of the Orwellian bills that are coming in, there's been some freedom protests and lockdown protests initially. Of course, the police were sent in mass. So, we've had that the same as everywhere, I guess. With our own, I mean, I think New Zealand's going to be the first that's going to be cashless. I'm already seeing places without, not accepting cash because of COVID. I see gleeful New Zealanders, swiping in even in level 1. I think level 0 is obviously if you're back to normal, but level 1 at the moment. So people are all keenly doing their QR codes at the doorway of everything. And we're all getting, like I'm doing a festival, which is normally about 3,000 people up on the top of Mount Tauranga, called Luminate. Now, not only have they called the Luminate festival organizers anti-Semites in the last few weeks, which is ridiculous because I play in a Jewish band, by the way. So like most of their bands are Jewish. So this is crazy. Eastern European, Gypsy, that's kind of that kind of music. Now it's going to be, you can only come if you are a signed up member, you've declared your address and phone number, you're completely traceable, and you have to be a member, you have to invest your money. And then if there is a lockdown in January, you lose all your money, that kind of thing. So, but with the protests, I suppose we have been allowed to do our protests. Assange protests have always been treated differently to any other protests that I've seen. We've had times where the parliament refused us power. I've had media companies refuse us footage. I've had, they refused us to even collect signatures outside Parliament for no reason. This was maybe February, March, so before COVID, they were already doing very strange it wasn't fair. And when we challenged them, they went, oh no, that shouldn't have happened. So things like that. We were already having those kind of problems with our protests, I suppose. But I mean, we are allowed to do them within certain confines. We're not allowed to go anywhere near the door where we could get near people. We have to be in the park behind barricades. We're not allowed to do much, like stick up signs anywhere other than what we've got carrying. It's just you can see that we're treated differently to even just a climate protest that's next door to us, or something that's a bit more mainstream that happens later in the afternoon. They'll treat it completely differently. So yeah, that's a bit frustrating. I think people are very compliant here, and I feel like one of the most powerful things we can do is not consent to all these crackdowns, no matter how minute. I'm one of these people who I wore a mask, and I've got my Julian Assange mask, but I actually have got asthma, and it kills me to fucking wear a mask. No offense, but it might be okay for you, but you're seeing people not allowed in gigs, not allowed in shops, not allowed in supermarkets. They're not wearing a mask. They're getting harassed, and they've got like a medical reason, still not being appreciated. So I think we have to be very careful about any incremental changes, anything. I'm not accepting that we just lie down and focus on, this is all about a money transfer and a power transfer to a medical mafia protection racket combined with the rest of the globalist players. It is definitely about that. And so every little incremental kind of thing that we agree to, we're consenting. So yes, attack the billionaires, but I'm concerned about universal basic income and cashless society and how those will be used. If you're a dissenter, you can forget getting your, welfare system or medical system or be allowed in the supermarket. You're just going to have to, grow your own fruit in your like tiny little yard. I don't know what is the future of this. So, I'm not liking the way New Zealand's going at all.
Something that I find really interesting is how arbitrary some of the restrictions seem to be. Like, for example, in the United States, we had a professional football team this week that played 90 minutes of a full contact sport. I mean, these guys are in each other's faces trying to kill each other for 90 minutes. But then when they went to the locker room, they were celebrating and they didn't have masks on. So they were fined. And I'm like, these guys were just beating the shit out of each other face to face for 90 minutes, but they have to wear a mask in the locker room. What purpose does that serve? It's beyond.
It sells it. It sells it. It makes it real.
Somebody else brought up a good point too. It's the guys killing each other and in each other's faces on TV for 90 minutes makes money. The celebration in the locker room does not.
Yeah.
So rather than if it was really serious, wouldn't they just cancel football? But they can't do that. There's too much money to be made. So, but it's just so arbitrary. It's like when they close, they say everybody has to close at 10. What, does COVID get more infectious after 10 p.m.?
It does. Much like the freaks, COVID comes out at night.
You know what I'm saying? Like it's so arbitrary. And then people get mad when, anti-maskers don't take it seriously. Well, we have Democrats flying to Hawaii for parties and going to fancy restaurants for birthday parties and not wearing masks. And they're all hanging out.
Governor has dinner parties and fucking laughs at everyone that he just put out of work and out of business and fucking, dude.
The more important thing is,
if you want to be mad at anti-maskers, go ahead and be mad at anti-maskers. But you also need to take a second and throw some of that same energy into being mad at the politicians who do the whole do as I do, not or do as I say, not as I do. And you also need to be mad at the media for creating an environment where nobody fucking trusts anything they say. And so that breeds this, skepticism in people, and it breeds this environment where they don't fucking trust you. And what do you expect? If that's the kind of environment you breed, and if you lie to people all the time, they're not going to take you seriously. That's on you. Like, stop blaming the people and start looking at the institutions that make that environment possible. It's ridiculous.
Well, the thing
you
with
think the
COVID
confusion is part of the whole strategy?
Yes, of
so
course.
You think the confusion is part of the strategy there. I mean, it's not, it's just distracting as well. We're not focusing on and that's where what Ian says is right. We do need to keep the eye on the prize and look at where the real problems are coming from. But yeah, I mean, it is all seeming to be smoke and mirrors and distraction while this thing is rolling out, because Biden, I think, was just a selection for that purpose too.
Well,
I mean, it doesn't seem to make the most sense.
Biden was just so Kamala Harris could be president for potentially 12 years.
Yes, because she couldn't make it herself. She had to be dragged through by Joe Biden. He had to be dragged through by Barack Obama.
Well, the thing that Trump did right here throughout the entire coronavirus is he annihilated the entire First Amendment and oversaw its annihilation, right? So the First Amendment provides that Congress make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting its free exercise. It protects the freedom of speech, the press, assembly, and the right to petition the government for redress of grievances. Short, simple, sweet, 2 lines that are currently being eroded. They're being eroded through lockdown measures, and that applies to churches. They're being eroded through mask mandates that are being applied to churches. We have, since the start of the George Floyd protests here, we've seen in the US over 700 journalists shot, over 700 journalists imprisoned for doing journalism. While at the same time, those events are praised for being open, but religious institutions are forced to close. Businesses are forced to close. Meanwhile, Home Depot and Walmart are still open, but the mom and pop hardware store isn't. And Trump, as he's leaving office or doesn't leave office or whatever the fuck happens, right, he's going to go down unwritten as the president that destroyed the entirety of the First Amendment, speech, assembly, and redress included. So that's just my whole thing about it, because the moment, right, we're already facing is that a government, or that no one's responsible for when something happens with a vaccine, right? The government mandates that everyone does it. If those laws are in place and they say, no, you can't petition your government for redress of this because we have another law that says you can't, that's the entire amendment. That's every fucking word we have lost.
How did that play out in the Spanish flu in the early 20th century? Because you had to do the same sort of things, wear masks, physical distance.
Well, there's actually a lot of research into the Spanish flu that shows that it may have started with U.S. military vaccinations. And those soldiers were then sent overseas and essentially started a pandemic in Europe, being based over there after being vaccinated. So even that, the history is super iffy of where it came from and how it started. So I don't know necessarily, but we did have mask mandates back then as a country. I don't know what the response to it was, like if there was civil unrest in regards to it or not.
But the death rate wasn't 99.94.
No, the Spanish flu killed some people, like significantly more people than this has. And not just the elderly, like 40% of COVID deaths in the state so far have all been in nursing homes and in care facilities. Like an additional 20 to 25% of overall deaths are people 65 and up. On top of that, you've got the study that basically said COVID only will end your life if you have other already existing comorbidities, things that are already killing you. Something like 9% of all COVID deaths, period, worldwide, were because of COVID alone. So if you're already sick, if you're already in bad health, if you've already got, a number of ailments, then yeah, you should probably be wearing a mask. But why are you going and fucking why isn't someone helping you get your groceries already? Like if you're that hard, if you've got it like that,
there's also all the overall deaths, the causes of other deaths have all gone down and they seem to have been replaced by COVID. So, and I mean, Ivor Cummins has done a wonderful job of breaking this apart in the UK, in Ireland specifically. And, what it's shown is gross mismanagement in aged care homes and the average age of death of 82. And certainly that is something that I think the dementia societies are now trying to figure out, and there's an inquiry in the UK because so many of them have got dementia. The question is statistically it's looking a little bit iffy itself. So Ivor Cummins has done some great work on that.
And I just real quickly to put a button on the Spanish flu thing, we still have the Spanish flu. It's H1N1. Like it's not like we stamped it out. It's still around.
I thought H1N1 was the swine flu.
That's H1N3, I believe.
Oh, right.
Or H3N3, or there's a bunch of different categories.
Yeah.
Or a bunch of different variations of it.
Do we want to, before we wrap up here, the Reporters Without Borders piece, because it's something we've talked about a whole bunch. It's the essentially now the coronavirus wing of Belmarsh
I'm
Prison.
going to do my events.
Yes,
well.
And if you could do your events
them,
first.
or I could just talk very sort of briefly about them. I don't know what you prefer.
Oh, do both. List them and talk about them.
Okay. While
so far, playing your fiddle and hopefully twirling.
Right now, I don't know. I can do that on the couch. I've got my hip replacement now, so I'm back on the hula hooping again.
Yeah.
Nice. It's gone very well. Not limping even. I don't think it was the hula hoop violining that caused the hip, by the way. That was congenital. So,
no. I was gonna say, man, like everyone I picked up's pretty light.
Do you know what I have hula hooped? Is I've hula hooped a scaffolding pole. You know the kind of thing that they use in circus, and you get a person and they're spread eagled, like Leonardo da Vinci style. I've managed to hula hoop that around my hips, and that is massive. Cool. And it's quite fun and slow. Yeah, so I could do that for a show. Maybe not with a violin. I think that might be a bit dodgy, and that's quite heavy. But anyway, let me go through that. So I think there's about 20 cities. I'll probably have to correct myself at the end, and once I've gone through 8 countries. And listed on the Twitter pin thread, there's a long thread, and it's now more or less chronological. Going through 35 events between now and 4th of January. And maybe there will be some ongoing during that week, but I think the main focus is that Monday of the week. Now, some of these, originally we were sort of intending to try and focus dates around perhaps the 10th of December for Human Rights Day, the 2nd and the 4th of January for the hearing. And we also had one before that was on the 11th of November for Remembrance Day, and a few of us did that already. So so we were encouraging those dates initially, but of course there's all these wonderful groups doing weekly protests, so we thought we might as well list all the events going on, and that worked out about 35. So the countries are Austria, we've got one in Vienna, we've got Australia, we've got Adelaide, Sydney, Brisbane, and Darwin. Darwin's doing events throughout the whole month, actually. And then we've got obviously London. In UK, we've got Germany, we've got Frankfurt, Hamburg, Bremen, and Stuttgart. A couple of those are weekly, one of them is fortnightly. We will have something in Wellington and Auckland and Mexico City. And those details are still to be confirmed. Also, we'll have something in either Victoria or Toronto or both in Canada. But again, those dates aren't confirmed. So if we go down, so Frankfurt had theirs on 28th. So what are we up to? 2nd of December now. Hamburg every Wednesday, 2nd of December, 5 to 7 p.m. And it's at Flaggensplatz. Then we've got Bremen every Thursday, 3rd of December, 5 p.m. at Liebenfrau-Kirchhof. And that's freeassange.eu is listing all the German events and some of the European ones. Sydney, we've got a weekly one, 4th of December, 5 to 7 at Sydney Town Hall. That's every Friday. Contact is Gong Steve, and I know that they've got David McBride and Julian's dad there this week.
No, that was last
Stuttgart,
week.
Oh, that was last week. I'm so sorry. Yep. Then we got Stuttgart, 6th of December, 2020, 2 p.m. Schlossplatz Kunstmuseum, Press Freedom for Julian Assange conference, also run by the freeassange.eu group. Hamburg, we've got every Wednesday, 9th of December, 5 to 7, and that's at Flaggenplatz again, Hamburg for Assange. Then we're getting into the Human Rights Day ones. And also I think Jason Burmis has been calling a great resistance on the 10th of December as well, we might note. So Brisbane, 10th of December, we've got Thursday, 5 o'clock, and John Shipton will be there, and Kieran O'Reilly is organising that one. And it's at Bunyapa Park. I'm not sure if I've said that right, Ian. You might correct me if you know. And it's on the corner of Vulture Street and corner of Thomas in the West End. Got San Francisco now. They are calling on people to stand outside Pelosi's office, 10th of December at 11 a.m. all day, if possible, in support of HR 1175 and HR 1162. We've got a number of protests in America that are focusing on Tulsi's legislation for whistleblowers. Obviously, very important to go outside congressional offices at the moment for that. Then we've got Manchester in New Hampshire, not in UK, which I've already mistakenly confused some people over. 10th of December, 11 a.m. to Wall Street at Jean Shaheen's office in support of the same thing, and that's Placille, who's 54, who is the Unity 4J Paula. And they're asking that Shaheen retracts the signature calling for eviction of Julian Assange from the embassy against international law. Bremen, again, we've got every Thursday, 10th of December, 5 p.m. Liebe Frauenkirchhof and freeassange.eu are running those. Denver, we have DNV Free GA at 10th of December, 4 to 6 p.m. at Hungarian Park, which is on the corner of Spear Boulevard and Emerson. Sydney, 11th of December, we've got 5 to 7 Sydney Town Hall every Friday. Then we've got Denver again. We've got 12th of December, 12 to 1 at Canyon and Broadway. DNV Free GA.
Real quick, that's in Boulder, Colorado, not Denver. That's right in front of the it's right in front of the Rocky Mountain Peace and Justice Center, and I'll be there for that. And I'll be there on the 10th too.
But I'll put a correction out. The image still says Boulder, Colorado, so I'll fix that. Frankfurt, we've got 12th of December, 2020, 1 till 3 p.m. every fortnight. They're saying, although I think things are changing around Christmas because we've got some fall on Christmas Day and New Year's.
What's
and
a fortnight?
Yeah,
ask a really American question. What's a fortnight?
Really? Are you kidding me?
2 weeks.
Seriously?
I gotta ask. Okay.
Sorry.
Just making sure.
Oh my God, those things that you
Dude,
everyone knows.
No, it's.
I prefer bi-weekly for those, like every other week.
Ooh.
Like fortnight's such a weird word to me.
Oh boy.
I'm never gonna let you hear the end of this, Andrew.
Oh, sorry. Okay.
I'm gonna use Fortnite all the time now.
I better fix that then if half the people can't read my tweets. That's terrible. Or at least it only affects one city, so there you go.
Well, it only affected one host, too.
Yeah, it only affects me.
You know, I mean,
I don't maintain eye contact well.
Okay, I'm going to carry on. We've got Darwin. Meg's up there. She's part of Candles for Assange on Facebook team and part of my moderators there. And she's doing a whole bunch of information stalls throughout the month, really. So starting with 12th of December, 8 to 1 at Parap Market. And then 13th of December, 5:30 to 7:30, candlelit gathering at the Nightcliff Foreshore Jetty. 13th of December, we've got 8 till 1 Nightcliff Market info stall. 14th to the 18th of December, every day, 11 till 1, she's at Raintree Park. And then Hamburg, again, we've got every Wednesday, 16th of December, 5 to 7 p.m. We're assuming that's the same, Flaggenplatz. Bremen, every Thursday, 17th of December, 5 p.m. at Liebe Frauenkirchhof. Sydney, 18th of December, we've got another one because it's a Friday. At the town hall, 5 to 7 p.m. Darwin, again, 19th of December. This is the big march in Parap Market. So earlier in the day, she's going to be doing the information stall at the market, and then the Nightcliff Foreshore Jetty will be where the march goes from. And that group is Julian Assange Supporters International, who you should follow on Facebook, Margaret. She's a Green Party member who's spoken out before for Julian. I think I might be almost to the end. Okay, Frankfurt, 26th of December. That will be their special Christmas one. 21st of December, sorry, will be their special Christmas And then we've got, of course, Washington, D.C., 3rd of Jan. I haven't supplied any details, but I have given the link to the website for Action for Assange in Washington, D.C. We've got London. It's going to be at the Old Bailey at 9 a.m., but the actual hearing is at 10 a.m. at the Old Bailey. And then, of course, you've got your 4th of Jan, Washington, D.C., and I certainly will be doing one in New Zealand. Mexico will be doing one. I'm sure there'll be many people doing that Monday, the 4th of January. Additional one came in because of the administrative hearing not working out, and Julian didn't get there because of COVID. We now have the final administrative hearing in London on the 11th of December, and that is in Westminster Magistrates Court, not Old Bailey, which I got wrong initially. And we've also got a new one in Adelaide, 10th of December, Beehive Corner on Rundle Mall, 4 to 6 p.m., a rally for Assange in Adelaide. And Vienna, just advertised, 2nd of December and 9th of December, 5 to 7 p.m. on Stephanplatz. Okay, and we will hear from them soon about the 4th of January one, which they're going to be doing too. I think I've covered it all.
That's amazing.
I've been banned from posting on Facebook for now, so I would appreciate anyone who is on Facebook, if they want to be a Candles for Assange moderator or admin or anything like that, they can help me share it there, because at the moment I am not able to.
Alex just reminded me there of something that hasn't really been addressed much, and that is every time Julian goes from Belmarsh to the courtroom, he is strip searched up to 5 times and often given a cavity search along the way. Now, that seems extremely extreme behavior, and it's a form of torture. And especially when he's being taken out of an isolated cell and then put into an isolated box in the courtroom. Why would he need to be strip searched so many times, and why would he require a cavity search? I mean, that
and wasn't there one instance it was a hot box as well? The cell was a hot box, and he was in there for an hour, like several hours.
It's just unbelievable what they're doing. You know, it's dehumanizing.
The number of human rights violations in this one case is extraordinary. It
so
really is.
That actually leads me to something here, because I was running through Twitter before the show and I found a tweet that Stella Morris had retweeted, and this is from the Council of Europe, and I'll throw a screen share up real quick so we can see this. We have, in 2021, our anti-torture committee will visit Austria, Bulgaria, and a bunch of other countries, Russia, Serbia, Sweden, Switzerland, Turkey, the United Kingdom. Do you have any information about a situation of persons deprived of their liberty in these countries? I'm going to put this link in chat. I'm going to put this tweet in chat for everyone. There are Free Assange supporters that have hopped in there and commented. Please comment. Please go to that website. This is, I will be pushing this for a while now. I will turn it into a call to action on our website specifically too. But in this moment, I did put it in all of the chats, including the Twitch chat. I don't know if it's in
close your share screen. It's showing all this stuff.
Oh, I'm smart. But
so you should have let him open up his Bitwarden first.
Put the link in the chat so we can see it on devices.
Yeah,
I'm pretty sure we all know. I think we have some things we could say to those folks.
Yeah. So please. There's maybe like 20% of those comments are Free Assange supporters hopping on there. So overwhelming. There's 74 comments the last time I actually looked at the comment numbers. So we have 42 people watching between A4A and MCSC. We have almost 60 people over on Slow News Day. Almost 70 people.
68.
Yeah. So
I'll tweet it.
Please go and fill that. Go and submit those like crazy. Because this is a time that it may seem inconsequential, but the Council of Europe was also excluded, I assume, from Julian's trial when Vanessa Bareitzer kicked everyone out of the fucking courtroom except the journalists for the video feed. The 42 members of the public that were removed from the cloud video platform included Reporters Without Borders, who's the next one that we're going to get into here.
And Amnesty.
And Amnesty. And parliamentarians from England. And I assume if the Council of Europe wanted to attend, they would have got the same level of treatment.
I mean, should we all be pushing for the War Crimes Tribunal? And I mean, here we are trying to save a man whose rights are always being trampled on in every case. But I mean, where is the serious recompense for any of these crimes? Do we need to be attacking on two fronts at the same time? Encouraging people to focus on the actual persecution, of war crimes?
Well,
So
the UN,
no,
No.
because I mean, not look. It would be. Go ahead, Ian.
look, I think Alex might be onto something here, because the 2016 UN report, which was a couple of years before Nils Melzer's report, it found that Julian was suffering under cruel and unusual punishment, and not only should he be released immediately, but he should be awarded compensation for it. Right. So we've already got that report's precedent. So to take this to the War Crimes Tribunal is actually an avenue that surely wouldn't hurt. I'd be inclined to write to the WikiLeaks team and say, look, have you looked into this? What are you doing? Da-di-da. Have you got, you can write to them pretty easily. Just through their website, contact us, But at first blush, I do think it's worth investigating. But what were you thinking there about it not being worthy?
So the U.S. isn't even a member of the ICC, and that would be the body that would try the U.S. for war crimes. In fact, the U.S. in the last several years has openly threatened not just international criminal court judges, but their families. I don't know if it would be, I mean, it's symbolic, and there might be more actual value out of a symbolic gesture at this point than pushing, for individual things like, for example, like Tulsi Gabbard's bills, or just focusing on the Espionage Act and just, trying to either reform or repeal that. Like, I think, and I've said this before, that we need to throw everything at it, go at it from every conceivable front and angle. And because again, like all of the people that benefit from Julian being arbitrarily detained to begin with, to illegally incarcerated, to put in Belmarsh, where they're actively trying to kill him, after in open court it was proved that they had already at least plotted to actively try to kill him. Yeah, like the people in power aren't budging, and the people that are going to benefit from the torture and the possibility of Julian Assange going away for 175 years, they're united, so we should be.
The thing is, Britain has been pinged for, some of the blame behind Russiagate, some of the blame behind, certainly Corbyn being an anti-Semite, some of the blame behind the Bernie problems. I'm just wondering, they are, signed up to human rights, aren't they? And they are the ones that have been also persecuting and torturing Julian, directly being in the country and not giving him safe passage. And I know that Christine has always had this focus, and I agree with her in some ways, that the too hard basket, war criminals are too hard, but let's not talk about making that part of the deal. Let's just talk about freeing Julian. But I mean, in some senses, like the low hanging fruit of the war criminals, is there one that we can get? Because the evidence is so irrefutable, there's no joining up of elites that could cover this up. I don't know. Is there a way that we can turn it around a little bit? Because I think the two solutions are part of each other.
Karl Rove is a war criminal who some years ago was an advisor to the Swedish Prime Minister, who worked closely with Klaus Borgström and Carl Bogström, who were the legal team assigned to SW and AA over the whole rape allegations ordeal. And they couldn't, at that time, he couldn't leave America. He couldn't go to Europe. But it's all symbolic. Whatever we do is going to be symbolic. There's no way that you can really. I mean, even look at Pinochet and how the English, supported Pinochet.
Yeah,
and he was an incredible sociopath, but I don't know. I think the idea of challenging the UK's behaviour might be an avenue, because you're never going to get it with the Americans. The Americans haven't signed on, so there's just no opening. The closest that could happen is restrict their movement, their freedom of movement, as was in Karl Rove's situation. I think it still is. I don't know. But I think the predator class is a very good terminology. I was calling them the ruling class, but they are the predator class, and they're the war profiteers, and their whole interest is to keep society as dysfunctional as they can for some perverse, unfathomable reason of hoarding cash, or I just don't understand it.
Power is addictive, I guess. I don't know. I've never.
No.
But what is it that they're actually getting?
Dopamine. That's the secret. Dopamine.
Yeah.
But I would like to thank both of you for joining us. We do have to wrap up this week's Vigil. I just want to say thank you very much to you guys for hopping on with us. If you could let people know where they can find you and what you have coming up.
Well, you can find us with the @ symbol at SAWC Sydney, SYDNEY. That's our Twitter handle, Facebook handle, and Medium handle. We don't have a website anymore. As for things coming up, we were planning to do stuff for the 10th, but I'm not sure that we are. And we also, I think the 7th marks 10 years since Julian has had restricted freedom of movement. We were planning to do something for that. And of course, the big one will be the 4th of January. So keep an eye out from those addresses for upcoming events. Thank you for having us.
Thank you, Ian.
Okay, and for me, Candles for Assange, and that's number 4 on Twitter. My pin thread has always got the most up-to-date set of events that I can give you at any one time. Alex Hills is my YouTube channel. We are actually doing a bit of an Occupy movement in Wellington at the moment with the Maori land battles on Shelley Bay, and Timothy and I have just done, after our Julian Assange song, we've now got a Shelley Bay song on my YouTube channel, so that's maybe worth looking and seeing what we've done there. And Facebook group is Candles for Assange. We've got about 2,500 on Facebook. And yeah, that's me. I'm Greenweaver Arch on Twitter is my personal one, and I also have Free Assange New Zealand for anything related to New Zealand protests. And that's NZ, not New Zealand. So okay, I think that's me.
Okay, so I think we lost Andrew. So
yeah, he has an hour and a half to drive home, and it's like hell snowing.
Right.
And
Okay, well then let me do his jazz hand, Drew. You can find us
yeah, do that.
at Action for Assange. You can visit the website. Don't forget the GoFundMe. Even if you can't donate, we know like shit sucks right now. I get it. But even if you can't donate, just share. Sharing's free, and maybe somebody that you share it to will be able to donate a couple bucks. So that's how that works. Teamwork. And you can find Andrew on Twitter at Andrew Zigman. Did I get all of his little bits and bobs?
You forgot the 4 in the Twitter
Oh,
handle. So it's
shit.
action underscore, and then you got to do the hand thing, and then the number 4, and you got to flip it.
Right.
Right?
Right. Okay, so
Flip it.
you can find us at _4. Is that better?
Well done.
I'll work on it. Work on it.
Well
Just in case I
done.
have to fill in again. I'll work on that.
Right?
So yeah, that's Andrew. And then me, you can find me on Twitter at Sarcasm Stardust. I also have another show called Facts on the Ground. We just wrapped and published an interview with Alexander Davidson, who some of you may know as Red Star Radio. And he was awesome. It was such a fun conversation. Always, he's super smart, so it's always cool to talk to him. So yeah, head over there and subscribe. You can find us on Twitter at FOTG Podcast. And thanks everybody in the chat. As always, I love you guys. You know it. You're the best people on planet Earth. And thanks to my co-hosts and also to Alex and Ian. You guys were awesome. It was a really good conversation. So yeah, that's it. Thanks, guys.
My name's
Thank you
Steve
so much.
Poikinen. I host a show called Slow News Day, which you should be watching on the Rockfin, because that's where I will be pretty much full time when YouTube arbitrarily yanks my channel. ROKFIN. It's free to get an account there. If you find that you're digging it and you'd like to endorse the channel, that gives you access to everybody's premium content. So it's, in my opinion, better than Patreon, because you don't have to shell out X amount of dollars per creator. You get everybody. But all of my content is free for at least 24 to 48 hours. Half the time I forget and I leave it up there for free for like 5 days. Because I'm really bad at trying to make money at this. I'm really not, though, so I guess it works out. And I'm also on Slow News, or I'm also on YouTube as Slow News Day Podcast. Easy way to find it in the search bar. We're on D Live. This Sunday, I will be speaking once again to retired Army Major Danny Sherson, who I absolutely adore. So that's going to be a fantastic conversation. The following Sunday, we're going to do a deep dive into the assassination plot of Malcolm X with Reverend Annie Chambers and Ian Schlackman, and that is going to be tremendous. Josh is very happy. So is Glory. So is Steve. But I love you guys. Thanks so much to my co-host and Rose, to Alex Hills. I really enjoyed the conversation, y'all. That was good. Thanks, Sleepy Josh, on the ones and twos, everybody watching in the chat, everyone that's donated to the GoFundMe. We love you. Like Misty said, if you cannot donate, please share the link and share it often. Share it way more than I do, because I forget and I don't do it. I just don't. So pick up my slack, please, because I suck at this. I love you guys. We will see you Saturday. Good luck to us all.
All the best. Bye-bye.